Just so everyone will know, all four of our teachers are present, Mike VonTungeln being one of them. All four of us, Jerry Gore also teaches, though he's not teaching at the moment. All of us serve as elders. Three of us here, Mike serves at Ridgecrest in Midwest City, not far away. So just wanted you to know that. Mike is our next speaker, and Mike will be telling us the importance of the world seeing in us what we ought to be. And again, if we are not what we say we are, we're not going to convert people. So it is imperative that we individually and as a congregation be what the New Testament says that God's children should be. And so Mike will be addressing that. At this time, I can't tell much about him. His bio is in the book, and Mike doesn't want you to know any more than that. Thank you.
I'm going to be reading this morning from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 31, verses 33 through 34. Jeremiah 31, verses 33 through 34. But this is a covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord. I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. No more shall every man teach his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Barnes congregation and the school, and especially Marion and Frank, for allowing me to get up and share some thoughts with you this morning. It's kind of, I'm kind of awestruck and really humbled to be able to preach, between these two men. Have Marion preaching on one side and Frank on the other side, and it's really great. The topic that I have this morning, in just a second here, let's get back to it. There we go. Okay, all this time doesn't count against me, right? Okay, that I'm fiddling with this thing. Okay. Okay, in the computer jargon, I was getting ready to do what they call the three-finger salute, Control-Alt-Delete, and just restart everything. But we'll see if we can't just restart the presentation. See if I can do two things at once and talk while I'm waiting for this to come back up. Okay, we're doing well here. There we go. 12th reason for a decline in church growth here is that some people are converted only after they've seen the good works of Christians. Going on, when the Lord's people know the Scriptures, live by the Scriptures, and love as the Scriptures have as command, they'll be effective teaching the lost. Want to stop right here and say, first of all, good works don't convert anybody. Good works don't save people. It's the gospel that saves. We read in Romans 1:16, Paul writes to us, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God to salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. We need to remember this, and we need to remember that without the saving power of the gospel, any of the good works that we do are nothing but temporary. All they are is Band-Aids. And we'll talk about this just a little bit more, but without the gospel, the good works, okay, it's nice to do them, but what we are here for, we're not here specifically to do good works. We're here to share the gospel, and we're here to do what our Master wants us to do, which is to share the gospel. I like something that Frank said a while back. I'm not sure what we were even talking about, but Frank made this statement when he said, the church is not a benevolent organization. The church is an organization that's benevolent. We do good works so that we can share the gospel, to make us more effective in sharing the gospel. So why are the good works important? The good works are important because they get the attention of the lost in a good way. People don't expect, or in this day and age, people don't expect that good things are going to happen. People don't expect that people are actually going to be nice to them. People don't expect that people are going to take time to tutor their children in reading. People don't expect that when somebody comes and says, I'm hungry, somebody's going to say, well, we've got a food pantry down here, we'd love to give you some food. The good works are important because they get the attention of the lost in a positive way. I'd like to talk about an example, some examples, really a couple of examples, 2 plagues that happened in the Roman Empire. Now, the first one was about 165 to 180 AD. The next one was about 100 years later. During this time, between 1/4 and 1/3 of the people in the entire empire died of those plagues. Now, Christians were affected. They had the same problems as other people had in the plagues, but there was a huge difference. The difference was that the Christians that were affected in the plague, rather than reacting the way the pagans reacted, the Christians reacted by living their faith out. They tried to follow Christ's example in the way they lived and the way they died. Their pagan neighbors didn't have anybody to turn to. Families were deserting the sick. People were leaving the cities to get away from the plague. And for the most part, the Christians were not doing this. They stayed through everything that was going on, through all of these plagues. They didn't only help their own sick. Okay, now we'd expect us to help each other out, but they didn't help just each other. They helped the pagan sick as well. Result was that the pagans' belief system had failed them. The Christian friends, what they had seen from their Christian friends, made them think, maybe there is something to this Jesus, maybe there is something to this Christianity. The Christians were trying to do what they believed the Lord wanted them to do. There was a Roman bishop named Dionysius, and he wrote these words in about 1260 AD. Most of our brother Christians showed unbounded love and loyalty, never sparing themselves and thinking only of one another. Heedless of danger, they took charge of the sick, attending to their every need and ministering to them in Christ, and with them departed this life serenely happy. For they were infected by others with disease, drawing on themselves the sickness of their neighbors and cheerfully accepting their pains. Many in nursing or caring for others transferred their death to themselves and died in their stead. The best of our brothers lost their lives in this manner. A number of presbyters, deacons, and laymen, winning high commendation, so that death in this form, the result of great piety with strong faith, seems in every way the equal of martyrdom. Epidemiologists estimate that basic health care, things like providing adequate water and adequate warmth, can increase the survival rate in these plagues by about 30%. And so there were many more Christian survivors than there were pagan survivors. Now that by itself was enough to change the balance, the ratio of Christians to pagans in cities in the empire, in some cities in the empire. But also, those pagans that were cared for by Christians, the ones that had Christians come and minister them, the ones that had Christians nursing them back to health, those pagans also had a higher survival rate. Now, what do you think these people are going to think? Well, what they thought was, and it's just what we would think, they had loving relationships with those people that had nursed them back to health. How do you think you'd feel about somebody that had nursed you back to health? You know, I know anybody that has helped me out in one way or the other, you know, I feel closer to that person. A lot more likely to listen to them. And now, instead of the suspicious relationships that they had had before, now the relationships that they had with the Christians were much more loving, and conversion rates soar. Now remember, they weren't doing these good works just to be doing good works. They weren't giving their lives just because they were tired of living, but they were doing this because they knew that this was what their master, what our master wanted them to be doing. So why aren't people in the world around us seeing our good works today? I'm afraid in a lot of cases that the answer is that because we're not doing them. It's been one of my observations, and I know it's kind of something that the eldership there at Ridgecrest has been struggling with, is that it seems like there are a lot of Christians that believe that their only service, their service to God, is taking up space in a pew on Sunday morning. Brethren, that's not it. That is not it at all. And it's not the way it was supposed to be. Now, another reason could be that this is something that was expressed by Howard Norton up at the Affirming the Faith seminar, that we have a lot of people in the church today have a misunderstanding of grace. The idea, and Chris Stennett, I believe, was right when he said this, when he said we're saved by grace. However, because we're saved, we need to be doing these works. Because we're saved, we need to be in the service of our Master, and we need to be doing what He wants us to do. Now, when we know the Scriptures, we're going to know that works are important. This is the scripture that Earl read earlier, and want to talk about the word know. The particular Hebrew word that's used for know in this passage is the idea of knowing by experience. It's the know. I think it was Chris Stennett that talked about it yesterday. The knowing by experience, in other words, not knowing about something, but knowing because we are intimate with that person or that object, that we have a great knowledge. Now, one of the ways we know by experience, we know the Scriptures by experience, is by doing those Scriptures. Now, when we know this way, when we have this deep knowledge of the Scriptures, then we're going to try to live by them, because it doesn't do any good just to be, there were Pharisees who could quote large parts of the law of Moses. Wasn't doing them a whole lot of good, because they were taking their traditions and putting them in front of those. For us to know the Scriptures, we need to live by the Scriptures. And now let's talk a little bit about what it means to live by the Scriptures. There are two Scriptures that stand out first. John 14:15. If you love me, keep my commandments. I want to paraphrase this just a little bit. Say it a little bit differently. If you love me, you will want to keep my commandments. I want to go kind of a little story here, but I think the story's got some meaning to it. I lost my dad when I was just almost 12 years old. My dad had made a lot of plans. He had been sick for a while, and he'd made a lot of plans, and one of the plans he made was for me to be taken care of. He had a friend, his best friend, and he asked his best friend to look after me. Now, his best friend was one of these people that had a reputation in the town that you don't mess with this guy, because he was redheaded and he was hot-tempered, and a lot of people, people just didn't want to fool with him. Probably for 3 or 4 years, and again he looked after me. He kept me straight, because I kind of ignored my mother. Shouldn't have, but I did. But anyway, but I knew that I got this man's name was Pat Mooney, and I knew I had to, if I did something too bad, that Pat was going to come down on me hard. Now, for the first 3 or 4 years, the reason that I did what he told me to and paid any attention to him, because I was afraid of him. I was scared to death of him. But later, as that relationship grew, I wanted to do what he wanted me to do, just because I wanted to. That's the relationship that we as we grow in Christ, that we develop with him. We want to, I know a lot of us initially obeyed the gospel because we're afraid of going to hell. That's why I obeyed the gospel. Just plain and simple. Now, as I have grown, I understand the things that he has done for me, and I want to please him. I want to serve him, and it's because I want to, not because I'm afraid of anything anymore. Next scripture is James 1:22. Doers of the word and not hearers only. Now, we're not to keep Christ's commandments out of fear of punishment. We're not to keep his commandments out of a sense of duty. We need to be serving him and doing what he tells us to do because we love him. We love him because he's done something for us that we couldn't do for ourselves. We cannot, there's no way we could work ourselves into salvation. He's done this for us. We couldn't do it. He's freed us from our sins, and our love for him should be motivating us to do the things that he wants us to do. Now, how do we live by the scriptures? I believe one of the ways we live by the scriptures is through the choices that we make. Like one of our choices was to be here this morning. You know, you could have been asleep you could have been asleep right now. When we know the Scriptures, we can use them to guide us to Christ-like decisions. Now, when I understand that God does not want anyone to perish, that leads me to try to make myself an instrument for sharing God's will with other people. God doesn't want anyone to perish. I shouldn't want anyone to perish. Now, to keep Christ's commandments, we have to be doing something. We have to be serving others. But there's a caution here, because all of those physical things that we do are temporary. You know, just like I said earlier, they're Band-Aids. You know, one of our speakers yesterday was Chris Hill from up at Luther. And Chris works really closely with Mark Hagwood, who's the director of the Luther Service Center up there. They do a really good work. Last month, Mark was preaching at Ridgecrest, and he put it this way. He said, "We've been on several medical missions. When you treat people for intestinal parasites, you'll know that they'll have them again in a few weeks. When we treat children for head lice, we know they'll be back in a few weeks. The only permanent help we can give is for their souls. The only permanent help we can give our family, our friends, our neighbors, the people we work with, anyone around us, the permanent help we can give them is sharing the gospel with them." Now, what is it to love as the Scriptures command? And again, some scriptures here. First of all, this is one that's really familiar to us. And this is when Jesus is dealing with Jesus first dealt with the Sadducees over paying taxes to Caesar. And then one of the Pharisees saw that Jesus had answered them well and asked him, "Lord, what's the greatest commandment?" And Jesus says here, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like unto it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." You know, these are really all we need. How so? Let's go from the back first. If we love our neighbor as ourself, do we want him to be lost? If we love our neighbor as ourselves, are we going to take advantage of him in a business deal? If we love our neighbor as ourselves, are we going to, actually, we're not going to do anything that harms him. If we love the Lord our God with all our hearts, then that means we are going to do what he wants us to do because we want to do that. Now the second commandment, John 15:12, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." How much has he loved us? How much has he loved us? He has loved us so much that he left his home in heaven. He had been with the Father from eternity, that he left his home in heaven, came down here, lived like one of us, was put to death as a criminal, and we have no idea what he suffered during the time that God had to turn his back on him. You know, we don't know. We know the physical things he suffered because they're recorded in the New Testament. We don't know the spiritual agony that he was in when the Father had to turn his back on him. Now, if we attempt to share the gospel without genuine love for those whom we're sharing it with, we're going to be seen as insincere and judgmental. However, we can't allow people, or we can't allow sin to go uncorrected or at least unidentified without saying something about it if we really love people. We have to say it in a loving way. Now we must love Jesus. We must love those that are created in His image and the ones that He died for. Now, when we love the Lord with all our heart, with all our soul, and all our mind, we're not going to be holding back anything for ourselves. We're going to realize that our purpose is to do His will. We're going to want what He wants, and that's for all to be saved. When we love the Lord our God with all our hearts, with all our souls, and all our minds, we're not going to worry about being inconvenienced. Well, you know, I can't come out and help you right now because, well, I'm just busy. I don't have time to do that. Well, we do have time. We'll have time for our brethren. When we love our neighbor as ourselves, it means that we don't want him to be lost. We'll teach him God's plan for salvation kindly and gently, but unapologetically. Now, if he rejects our word, talking to myself now, if he rejects our word, we are not going to become angry with him. We're going to continue to pray for him. When we love one another as Christ has loved us, we're going to have a forgiving attitude toward our brethren. When we have differences, Marion talked earlier about the division. When we have differences that threaten to divide the church, we're not going to go off in different directions and try to get together our own little factions of the congregation to support us. We're going to go to the brother or the sister that we have the differences with them, and we're going to try to work this out. We're going to try to study it through, work it out by God's word. You know, I agree with Marion 100% that when we have these divisions, at least one party of that division, or one of the parties involved in the division, is sinning. In most cases, what it is the sin of pride. I have stuck by this point, and I'm not going to back down from it. And, you know, don't try to persuade me with the scriptures, because I know what I believe already. Now, rather than seeing, now when we do this, you know, we're not gonna air our disagreements and our dissatisfaction on the social media. In other words, we're not going to be out on Facebook saying things about brother or sister so-and-so, and we're not going to be out on Facebook saying things about the preachers or the elders or some of our other brethren. But what we're going to be doing, the things that we say are things that are going to be good for edification. Rather than seeing, then the result is that rather than seeing God's people fighting, saying bad things about each other, then the people outside the body of Christ are going to see the love that we have for each other. They're going to see the care that we have for each other, and they're going to want to realize that they want something like this. You know, who wants to be part of a family that's always involved in a fight? That's, you know, I don't want to be in a family like that. I want to be in a family where we love each other. We look after each other, and I think most of the people on the outside are the same way. Knowing the scriptures, living by them, loving, produced some dramatic results in the first century. In the second and third centuries also, the second and third century Christians also underwent tremendous persecution. But when the plagues hit the Roman Empire, they continued to try to live their faith. Rather than turning, they took care of each other, but rather than turning inward, they reached out to the people around them who were suffering in those plagues. They reached out to the people who had been abandoned by their own, and they tried to serve them. The example that these Christians set made people want to hear the gospel. Made people want to hear the gospel because they knew what they had. They knew it was something they didn't have for themselves. They realized that the Christians had something that they needed for themselves. Now, the results were dramatic. Brethren, if we do the same thing today, there's no guarantee that our results are going to be dramatic. I want to put a caution here. The results are not our business. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 3:6, I planted, Apollos watered, and God gave the increase. Our job is to plant and to water. Our job is to plant and to water. God will give the increase. He will give the increase that He wants us to have when we do our part. We've got to do our part, and we want to leave God to do His part. Now, there's a reason that I'm really harping on this right now, and I think it might be our cultural thing. Chris Stennett talked about our American culture. And I think one of the things that I can say about it is we're people, we want to get out and get something done. We want to get out and get results. We want to make something happen. I believe that there's a temptation for preachers and there's a temptation for elderships when we perceive that we're not growing the way we ought to. Maybe we're thinking rather than, okay, we are not planting enough and we're not watering enough, well, let's do something different. My opinion is that that's what's behind the move to the instrumental music up at Quail Springs and then down there at North Richland Hills. And some of the other things, some of the other innovations or whatever you want to call them, some of the bad stuff that's going on in the church. Some of the stuff that shouldn't be going on where we've departed from God's plan. Our job is to plant and to water. When we live by the Scriptures, when we love as the Scriptures command, we're going to be out there and we're going to be planting and watering as we need, the way we need to do. We can trust that God is going to give us, that God is going to give us the increase. Now, one more thing. I wish I were speaking to my own congregation now, but I'm sure that this is the case here. One of the things that the elders are concerned with is providing the opportunities for other members of the congregation to plant and water. Now, one of the things that we do, and I tell you what, I'm really proud of this, and I brag about it every chance that we get. One of the things that we're involved with a thing called Whiz Kids. And we're allowed to bring, right now it's about 24, 25 kids from Willowbrook Elementary into our building on Monday afternoon. We feed them a snack, give them a Bible lesson, and then tutor them on reading. We haven't had any baptisms out of this yet, and my guess is that it's going to be probably a few years before we do. But, I know the young man that I tutor, when I take him home, I remind his mom, I like your son, I like Philip, he's a cute kid, he's a great kid. But we're doing this because this is what Jesus wants us to do. Because He wants us to share, He wants us to help those around us. Again, our job's to plant and to water. God's going to give the increase. Now, if you're here today and you're not a Christian, There's not going to be a better time to become one than now. Now, if you know what to do, why not be united with Christ in baptism right now? If you don't know what to do, well, then you could ask Jerry, or you could ask Marion, or you could ask Frank, and they will either sit down and instruct you on what to do, or they'll pair you up with somebody else that will. There's no need to walk out of here today if you're not a Christian without being one, without becoming one. Now, if you're a Christian and you've got something that's between you and God right now, that's keeping you from being the way you need to be, or if there's any other way that we can be of service to you, ask that you would come forward while we stand and sing the song that John selected.